We have three things that we try to do. And whenever anybody's making a decision and interacting with a client, who have you delighted today? Is the decision that you're making taking away from your opportunity to delight them? And this is going to sound crass, but are you going to screw Andy over by doing this? Hi, this is Andy Seeley, and we are having another little episode of A Family Business. And today we're really lucky. Last week we actually spoke with Jeff Metzger, the founder of Kids First. And we did mention in that interview that we were going to chat the lovely Jennifer and Casey, who operate the business, I guess, since 2020 with his happiness. And we've got Jennifer and Casey. Jennifer, you run the operation at this point as the CEO, correct? Am I getting that correct?
Yeah.
And Casey, you're kind of working a lot with Jeff with the business camp and so forth and other stuff, correct?
Yes.
Why don't we, before we jump into everything, why don't we just talk a little bit about you guys and what your roles are, just so everybody knows where you guys are coming from, because I feel like I might need to just clarify that. So Jennifer, do you want to start with how you got to be involved with Kids First and what you do?
I'm in my 27th year here at Kids First, and the first 7 or 8 were spent as the head coach and department leader for the girls' optional team program. And then I spent about 13 years running our preschool gymnastics program, which is our largest program here at Kids First. At the end of 2019, I moved into the executive office as the vice president of operations. And then, of course, March of 2020, the world shut down. And shortly thereafter, Jeff retired in June of 2020, and I became the company president and have been sitting in that seat for the past 5 years. And I'm also a business partner with Jeff, both here at Kids First and our second location, Kids First 2.
Awesome. And Casey?
I have been here for 28 years. I started at Queen City Gymnastics as a coach before we actually became Kids First Sports Center. And so when we moved over here, about 9 months after I began, I moved into the department leader role for our girls rec instructional program, as well as developmental team. Still had my hands on that a bit. So I did that for probably 6 years until I started my family, and then backed off, moved just into the Tumblebee department as a teacher, just teaching part-time for 8 or so years. And then when my kids were ready, didn't need me as much, then I was able to come back and then began to be an assistant department leader to Jen for a handful of years. And then when she moved into the executive office, I became the department leader for Tumblebees. Loved that role and did that for about 5. And then just most recently moved here into the executive office as the VP of operations.
Wow. Okay. So we've got the 2 big dogs of Kids First here. And one of the biggest things that I wanted to chat with you guys about, because I think it's a really major issue in the kids activity center industry as a whole, is staffing and building of teams. And obviously you guys are long-term team members of Jeff's. You've been there not almost from the beginning, but from a long time ago. That really shows that he is very committed to growing people within his organization and bringing people up throughout. Let's talk a little bit about the hiring and team building and so forth. So hiring in kids activity centers can be kind of unique. You're not just finding staff, you're finding role models, you're finding special people that kind of like feed the culture of the business and build children. What qualities do you prioritize when building a team, like thinking it from a team culture standpoint? And what's been the biggest challenges that you guys have faced in finding those people? Like most kids activity center owners, they struggle to find people. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I would say in my more recent role of Tumblebees, I think we end up in a good spot. We have found that we have created a great culture and we've created a great first job experience. And so once we found some staff that are really, you only have great people and great young people, they tend to have great friends. And so we become this, it's almost like a wheel that keeps moving. We have siblings that come in because their older siblings worked for us, or they were former students or athletes, or they know from their friends that we're a great first job or a great experience for a job. I didn't struggle in the Tumblebee department more recently at all to get applicants. That said, these are part-time, young staff members, a lot of high school and college students, which have their own set of challenges to work with, but we didn't really want for them, meaning there are lots to choose from for the most part. That wasn't always the case. After COVID was a bit of a struggle. We had to sort of start from square one again. We lost a fair amount of our workforce and there was lots of challenge there. And it did take us a while to rebuild into this place where we have a much more of a, don't have to seek. They're coming to us first. that changed. We had some things we had to pivot. As a leader for myself, I discovered that the generations were different. The people that were coming to me were a little different. The young people were a little in need of some guidance. And so I shifted my priority from being a teacher of students, rather being a teacher of new employees. So I used all those same skills that I know how to work with kids and apply them to my staff. So really figuring out ways to connect with them, recognizing that there's an opportunity for their growth, that they weren't going to come in knowing it all and they needed me to teach them. And also then recognizing what they wanted out of the experience and highlighting that to them. So that this job and this opportunity in this community that we've created here at Kids First will teach them leadership skills, communication skills, personal responsibility, conflict resolution, time management, these things that they're going to need for whatever they do next. And we're okay knowing that they're going to go do something else next. So we're perfectly okay having staff knowing that they're going to be here for a short period of time. Like Jen likes to say, we're either a landing pad or a launching pad. And so when we're considering, the majority of our staff are here as launching pads. They're coming in for a short period of time and moving on. And we want them to be better on the other side of being here at Kids First, just like we feel that way about our students.
So we see a lot of problems on our end with kids activity centers having a big focus on hiring teenagers. Is teenagers a large group of, like a large part of your hiring process, or are you looking for people with a little bit more miles under there?
That's a big question. So I think that we're coming at it from two different sides, I suppose. The majority of our employees are part-time, under the age of 22 employees. We actually start as young as 14 in more of a junior coach role, but we realize that many of our frontline instructors are going to be those 16, 17-year-olds, and we have to recognize what kind of growth they need and nurturing they need, just like we would our athletes. So yes, the majority of our workforce are going to be probably 16 to 20 years old, and that includes everyday teachers, coaches, camp counselors, etc. Our leadership roles, yes, we want not just miles under their belt in this industry, but we want some experience, people of strong character, people that want to work hard and be part of something really bigger than themselves. And if we go back and we look at the whole of hiring, we're very much a value-based hiring company, which means we've got a structure. We understand our hiring cycles, we understand our hiring needs, and we understand that we might get people that come in the door that have absolutely zero experience. But if they are willing to be committed and dedicated to a high goal and want to work together with other people, we can teach them the skills that they need. So yes, we want people with experience, whether it's life experience or skill that we need experience, but we also want those blank slates. We feel like we can really nurture their development and help mold them into the kind of employees that really make Kids First what it is.
With teenagers, just sticking on this, just because I know it's a major conversation that we see, that Congress is hiring is always like the biggest question that actually comes through is, what's going on? How do we do better with our hiring? Burnout seems to be a major issue with a lot of owners of kids activity centers, and sometimes that's because of this hiring trap that they get into. Maybe they only hire teenagers, and teenagers are great, but sometimes teenagers have a priority of going on a date with their boyfriend on a Friday night and calling in sick, right? Or whatever, right? How do you manage that? Is it something that you actually don't have, or do you have in Cincinnati? Is there a lot of really great teenagers that behave differently?
They don't want a social life at all. They just come in and work.
We talk from the get-go. I talk about it in the interview process right from the beginning. I'm explaining to them what this role is and what it requires and the people that we're looking for. And I also am very transparent that it's not for everybody. Not everybody gets to do this. That there's a certain amount of time and effort, that takes to be a good teacher and to be a part of our team. And so we talk about the fact that it requires a minimal amount of 2 to 3 shifts a week and what that looks like. I talk about the fact that we create schedules over a period of time that they need to commit themselves to. And I'm asking from the get-go, what other activities are you involved in? What sports are you involved in? What clubs are you in school? Because that's important too. We want them to do those things. Again, we're looking for well-rounded people because they're good for us when they're well-rounded people, but we also know that they need that for their later lives, again, which is what our goal is. But we just talk about what it means, that the promise that we've made to our parents that we're going to be here for their children, and that of course there's going to be moments when they have to miss because of this or that, but what we're asking them is to think about it in long-term ways. Can you commit to for the next 4 to 6 months? What our process is if you can't commit to that. we have a standard. If you aren't meeting our standard, then we're going to have a conversation. So I talk about it right from the beginning. And then I talk about it again if I have a second follow-up interview. I talk about it in the hiring moment. We go through our list of responsibilities as crew members. And part of that is to be dependable so your coworkers and peers can depend on you. And then we talk about it again in the training process. It's just a constant conversation. I think that part of that is also how we spread our culture and our value system right from the very beginning. This is why we exist. It's for the effort to be in front of these children and create a great experience for them and their families. And that means that we need that from you. We need that commitment from you. And I say, this isn't always an easy job. There's so many things about it that are rewarding and enjoyable and super fulfilling, but it's exhausting and there's lots of challenge. But
I kind of like what you were saying, Casey. Not everyone gets to do this job. Right?
Yeah.
This is a special job.
Yeah.
Most teenagers might be at Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or something.
And we talk about that because at a Chick-fil-A or a McDonald's, that weekly schedule can change by the week. And here we ask for a seasonal commitment. So that may be somewhere in a 3 to 6 month commitment, which allows those teenagers that flexibility of, I don't have to give up my Saturday morning every Saturday for the next year, but I do need to give it up for the next 3 months. And if something comes up, we've talked about what, like Casey mentioned, what that process is. We talk about it before it happens, what that process is when you can't come in because of something else that has taken priority.
Awesome. The most common, and this is, me being data centric again. So the most common complaint that we see on Google, if it's a bad review, is I'm not paying to have my child taught by a child. Do you ever get that pushback, or is it because of your hiring practices you're able to kind of avoid that?
We get that. We are a service-based, relationship-based business like everyone in this industry. And the hard thing about that is when someone sees our lack of ability to meet their needs, if it's painful to us. So just like hiring, we try to preempt that through education. We have probably 80 to 90 camp counselors every summer, and many of those camp counselors are 16 to 18 years old, and that's a big responsibility. And so we've got to put those people, those client-facing people out front that know how to communicate verbally. You mentioned the generational differences. When we have a 16-year-old who is a camp counselor or a preschool gymnastics teacher, we've got to teach them how to communicate face-to-face. We know that digitally they can communicate really well, but they're not used to having that expectation on them that they go out and they talk professionally in regards to child development and in regards to class management. We got to teach them those tools of not just how to do the responsibilities we're asking of them, but also how to communicate those things. So it becomes part of our training. And what I like to talk about in large groups of people, like at Congress, is we create these training plans for our 15, 16-year-old athletes. Do we have training plans in place for our 15, 16, 17-year-old employees that help them to back up when they come up against something that they don't know how to solve? And instead of them just walking out because they're frustrated, giving them the tools to be able to do the things that cause us to stand out in our industry in a positive way.
I think one of the things that I see, and this is after talking with Jeff as well and speaking a little with you too, what I like about Kids First and what I see is that you guys see development as not just something that you're doing for your kids, that you do it for everybody in the team. You guys, Casey and Jennifer, you're probably working on your own development in some ways too. And it feels like Jeff is probably working on his, even at the stage that he's at based on what he was telling me. Has that been part of the culture? Because I know that, one of the things that Jeff said was a real difficulty was when he got to a point back in the early 80s where he decided that it couldn't be all about him. His business couldn't be set up as a hub and spoke kind of situation where everything came to him. That seemed like a very major decision for him at some point to set up a company with a little bit of hierarchy and a little bit of delegation. With that being said, that means you got to let go of things and trust that others can do things. And you have junior employees, but then you have junior managers and middle managers and so forth when you have a large organization like yourself, which is service-based, which means there's lots of people involved, right? From a developmental side, and especially as senior managers, is that a really key part of kind of the success of what you guys are doing?
I can speak from my personal experience. So I've been here for 27 years, and Jeff set such a strong foundation of delegation and giving us full autonomy to run our departments the way that we felt like was a good fit for Kids First. And it was through all those previous decades that even before being at Kids First, that allowed us to be able to fulfill our responsibilities and obligations while he was the driver of the business and the visionary of the business. He also started each department with some hands-on at some point, so he understood how everything operated. And in 2020, when I took over as the company president, there were a lot of gaps in my own education of how each department operated. I became very dedicated at that time to learning about all the departments, but also not just being a good place for kids to learn and grow, but also for our employees. And I think our entire leadership team has the same kind of commitment we have to our children. We're all dedicated to that commitment to our employees who are in here doing the hard work. So yes, we want to be able to educate and grow personally. I want to, but I also want that for every single one of our employees. So they leave wherever they go next, whether it's to retire or go on to their next best job with tools that make them a better, stronger individual and employee.
I agree. I think being a gold standard of anything, and I think Kids First is a gold standard in the Kids Activity Center realm. That's not me just trying to, be nice to you. That's, to me, it's just a stated fact in the industry. Gold standard companies, and I'd like to think that we, Creatively Disruptive is in the Kids Activity Center marketing part and revenue development part. Development of staff is a constant, important thing. Things change, people change, staff change. When you're managing a large group of people like you guys are, there's going to be turnover, and that means there's a constant development plan needed, right? With us, I don't have a lot of staff turnover, but we have a lot of stuff that's new all the time, right? With technology, it's like every day, Facebook's changed something, Google's changed something, the way websites are developed has changed. AI is just driving me crazy at the moment with the pace that's making things change. Being able to keep developing people, I think, is really critical. Here's a question, what's the one major staffing challenge, especially in the since Jeff has maybe left? Maybe this is more of a Casey Jennifer feeling. What's the major staffing challenge that you guys have faced, and how did you overcome it? Well, let's just dig into that a little bit. I'm digging into this a lot, mainly because you guys are seen as that gold standard, and these staffing issues I hear constantly from you. I mean, you guys do too. I know that you guys do the boot camp and everything. I highly recommend anybody in the Kids Activity Center world that's trying to figure out how to get some support and development, that you need to be reaching out to Casey about Jeff's boot camps. But tell us about something that was really difficult for you guys and how you got through it, staffing wise.
I think for me, right after, like I said earlier, after COVID, we in theory, laid off 200 employees with that when we shut down. And when it was time to come back, not everybody was ready to come back. We lost quite a few of our full-time hourly staff that were spread out on the schedule. They just made decisions to move forward with their lives in other directions. We kind of were starting at square zero. It was really difficult. And we have hiring mantras or hiring disciplines that Jeff has developed over the years. He always talks about that, each one of them has a name behind it. There's an experience behind that he decided, okay, I'm not going to do that again. So we always have those in place. And one of them is we'd rather go short-staffed than poorly staffed. And that seems easy to say and easy on paper, but in reality, you have to really do it. And that's where we were. It was a lot of hours on my part, and we were teaching a lot. But that's what we needed to do in order to propel the program forward. We weren't going to be willing to change who we were and change what we believe in just to have somebody in the door as a teacher. And then again, I had to change my whole mindset of working with employees. They weren't just doing the thing because this is what we do here. I had to really build into them. I had to offer them more learning opportunities. I had to celebrate them more. I had to have more patience with them. So it was really about changing myself and my approach so that I could meet them where they were, and then take that and start to build them back up. And so that was hard. And at the time too, we weren't having applications come in. So I think that might be more common in some other gyms and other across the industry. They just don't have people looking to work there. And again, that's not really where we are, at least not in the department the preschool department. But I think as a whole, we have a pretty good run here. I think we're known to be a great place to work, especially with those younger people. So we just constantly getting new people that come in and then being able to sort them out. It's a much different place, much better place to be much more selective than try and decide what is, this one person that wants to work here, can we do something with them? Can we build into them? So
I think there's a negative thing for that person if you hire them wrong, right? If you hire somebody and they weren't the right person to hire, they have a terrible experience. You're not doing anybody a favor by giving them a job that they're just not cut out for.
And I have actually recently let go of a young person. And one of the things I said to her was, I can just see that you're not thriving here. And that's not what I want for you. I want you to be in a place where you're going to thrive and grow and be excited. And I just don't feel that this is it. And so partially that's my error, because I didn't see that before, but
Right.
I see that now. And I am happy to help you with whatever I can do with what you do next. But I don't think this is the place.
And Andy, I'll also add that I think we have dedicated ourselves, not just Casey and I, but Kids First has dedicated ourselves to constantly becoming a better place to work. Having a work environment where people want to be here, because this industry is exhausting. Being in any service industry is exhausting. We're managing parent expectations, we're managing emotions and the strengths and weaknesses of this generation of student that can be very challenging for the most veteran employee or coach or instructor, let alone for a young teenager. So we have to be a place that understands the generational differences as we shift from a millennial to a young Gen Z inside our organization. We have to know that they do want to be acknowledged. It's not that the days of old where you just keep on going because you get your paycheck. These people want to be recognized for their work and their effort. They want to be celebrated publicly and privately. And we owe that to them. We owe it to today's employee to know what their needs are and then to be able to meet those needs.
So you are getting very close to starting to hire alpha generation. Did you know that?
Yes, we do. And we're preparing for that just as much.
2010.
Right now.
2010, Jennifer, is the first years of the alphas.
Those are our competitive team members in many cases right now.
Yeah, I think that's so important to be able to. I was just going to say, Casey, I pat you on the back. I think it's a real sign of good management when management can look at themselves and go, hey, the reason I let someone go is because I didn't do the best job I could have done when I chose that person. That's a sign of a good introspective manager to be able to look at that and go, you know what? It's not the person that I'm firing's fault that they're getting fired. It's my fault because either I didn't train them right or I maybe chose them wrong up front. I always do that. And I like to think of myself as a good manager. I'll let other people say that. If I have to let someone go, I look at it introspectively and go, okay, what did I do wrong here? Because something went wrong in my process to allow someone to get into the organization that ultimately I've got to let go because they weren't the right fit, or more likely the business that we operate wasn't the right fit for them. Because everybody's got the right fit, I think. I mean, unless we don't know a couple of people who probably are just unemployable, but most people want to do well, right? And want to thrive and want to work hard, but not every place is the right place to be, especially when there's standards and culture and things that you're defending. So with that, let's talk move a little bit towards the culture, which I find really interesting, especially talking to Jeff, the Kids First culture. So Kids First has a super strong culture, we hear about that. I mean, you guys are well respected in the industry for the strength of the culture and kind of your standards and what you guys believe in. What is the hardest part of maintaining that across such a large team of people? What have you learned in that process of maintaining that strong cultural experience? Because both of you aren't talking to every staff member every day to kind of police it. How does that work?
That word police it, that's a hot button. Don't anything in here. So sorry if I got a little cringy there.
No, that's all right.
I think, again, that comes back to the foundation that's been laid over the course of decades prior to Jeff's departure. And one of my driving forces was to continue to grow and perpetuate this culture and not see it slip away as he stepped out. That's a tall order. So really, our time is most spent with our leadership, our department leaders, to just consistently realign ourselves with what are our high goals, how do we do that, how do we connect with each other, where are we misstepping, and let's get realigned, because we're not perfect, we're human, and we're all close, and it's easy to find ourselves getting a little wayward and we have to bring it back. I do a training with every new employee where we do talk about our culture, that our culture doesn't bend. We are who we are, and we're dedicated to the 26 points of Kids First. So it really becomes the responsibility of each department leader to instill that same strong kids first culture into their daily operations of their department with their team members, and to realign when they feel like something's not working. And that happens constantly. We constantly have to have realignments just because we know we've hired great people, who are of good character. We just have to remind them of how we function inside of Kids First, because we owe that to our client, as Casey's mentioned, our promise to our client. And the only way that we can fulfill that promise to that client is to all be aligned. We might go about it a little differently, but at the end, we're all standing on the same foundation.
I love the fact that you cringed at the word policing. And the reason why I love that is I think a really good culture doesn't need to be policed, it needs to be nurtured.
That's exactly right. And
because if you're policing it, it means you're coming down and you're watching everybody, making sure they're doing everything. That's really hard to create at least a positive culture. I guess you could create a kind of a horrible culture with policing, but it's about people buying in, right? It's about people living what the beliefs are.
Yeah, and I feel like it has to be part of our everyday conversations with each other. It's part of every decision that we make. We have one sheet of paper that has our 26 points. We pull it out when we have to have a difficult conversation. It actually makes our jobs easier, I think, because it 100% tells us what the answers are, right? Like right here are the answers.
Well, it's almost like commandments in your business. It's
Absolutely.
like or if you don't want to use a religious term, maybe it's like a constitution. These are the rules that must not be broken.
It's helpful to also remember that when we're doing things, we're doing it for the benefit of Kids First. And so it's not me against you. It's not me personally or you personally. This is what the company needs. This is the promise that we've made as employers or employees or leaders, is to uphold this. And so we've gotten away from it somehow, or where's the deviation, and let's come back. And this is what's telling us this is what we need to do. And it can't be on the wall. It's not just,
no.
I've had several, different gyms or people in the industry who have adopted our 26 points, and they feel confused when it isn't. It's not what I've been.
It's not theirs.
Well, it's just putting it on the wall and, printing the paper out and putting it on the wall is not enough. That's not what you do. It has to be.
I think having them written down is important, but they have to be your beliefs too. Like, I think every gym owner, every kids activity center owner, every business owner has their own beliefs. They're going to attract a certain kind of staff. They're going to have a certain kind of culture. It can't be Jennifer and Casey's culture being injected into Andy's, and Andy's culture can't be injected into Jennifer and Casey's, because we're all slightly different. Now, we might have 90% of the time we're agreeing on something, but there might be something else. One of the things I do really like that you guys do, and I guess I'm just asking for confirmation, how important is it that you've actually got your beliefs written down? Because a lot of businesses, they got beliefs inside the owner's head or the manager's head, but no one else really sees it.
300 people if it's inside my brain. It has to be a constant reminder that is our, Jeff references it as our true north. That is where we're constantly moving toward. And our 15 and 16-year-old have to know it just as much as the most veteran employee inside our walls. There's so much to know. It's easy to miss something. If you don't reference it, if it's not infused into our lesson plans and our training and our communication to our clients and to each other, it gets forgotten. And that's when you start to slowly fall away from that culture that was created over decades of time.
So it's a living document almost that is referred to daily.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's important. We have a thing, and I try to inject this into our clients, is we have part of our rules is delight. Is delighting people. So delight to me is the opposite to anger. It's as strong of an emotion as anger, and it has the same effects. So if you anger somebody as a service industry, that person who's angry is going to yell and scream, tell a lot of people about it, go online, write horrible things and blah, blah, blah. That's the anger side. Delight, you truly delight someone with oh my God, I can't believe Casey just did this at Kids First. They run out, they tell all their friends, can you believe what they did? And then they go online and they write reviews about it. So delight is really important. And we have 3 things that we try to do. And whenever anybody's making a decision in interacting with a client or anybody, even a staff member, is who have you delighted today? Is the decision that you're making taking away from your opportunity to delight them? And this is going to sound crass, but are you going to screw Andy over by doing this? So those are kind of like 3 decision-making rules that we kind of like, it's like a mantra.
Like
and the goal is to one, make sure that we're not delighting someone to the point where they're giving them a car on Andy's dime, right? But thinking about how do we inject that delight, and you don't need to delight everybody, but if you had 200 staff members and everybody delights 1 person a week, that's 200 people delighted, 200 people potentially telling another 10 people each the amazing experiences at Creatively Disruptive or Kids First. Everybody complains about not getting reviews and so forth. I find it very hard to believe that any company that has that kind of mentality doesn't get a steady flow of organic reviews. So that's a written down rule that we have in our organization, and it's all around delighting people and coming up to the point that our staffing meeting, we have a staff meeting, an all hands staff meeting every Thursday, and we spend 15 minutes talking about who delighted who this week. And the stories that come out are quite entertaining, I'd say, because some of the team are trying to do mental gymnastics, trying to figure out how to delight somebody because they get rewarded by it on a Thursday. And I think it's, even in the word delight, it just makes you smile a little bit. Like if you say delight, I find it hard to believe that you can't just smile a little bit after it, you know? So anyway, sorry, that was thrown off a little bit of a tangent there. But I love the fact that you have it written down, and I love the fact that it's a little of a constitution. And the reality is, when it's written down like that, when your staff members, especially your junior managers and your middle managers, they're not always going to be around you to get some guidance. They can look at that and go, okay, if I make this decision in the realms of these guidelines, I'm probably going to make the right decision. I'm probably going to make the right move.
And if they don't make the right decision, it's also their guide of how to make it right, how to fix it, be accountable for it without anybody needing to micromanage them.
And I think that's such a critical part of trying to arrest. And one of my personal goals is to try to help remove the numbers of gym owners and kids activity center business owners and even managers that get burnt out. I think that burnout comes from not knowing what to do and feeling like they're the ones that everybody comes to when you've got a document that gives guidance. I think that resolves a lot of that. Would you agree?
That just made me think. We had a leadership training with the childcare industry last year. We did a weekly training with him for about 10 weeks or something. But when you said that too, I thought it was fascinating. He made a comment that as a leader, you should never give the answers to the people that report to you. And I feel like, because we're giving them a disservice. We're not allowing them the opportunity to learn or walk themselves into what the solution is. If we don't have to tell them what the answers are. And so even as leaders, we can kind of push the paper toward them if we need to, right? Or remind them of that, but we want them to.
You just highlighted rule 5 on the Andy list, which is, if you've got a problem, come to me, but have a solution before you come to me, even if it's kind of crazy, right? But show me that you thought through the problem, not just saying, hey, Casey, I've got this problem. What's the fix, right? Hey, Casey, I've got this problem. This is what I think I should do. What would you agree? Because I can then jump in, or you could jump in and say, well, maybe we could think about this or this or that, or it's like, that's good. But the main thing that I want, especially with my junior managers or any staff member, is for them to think about the problem and what they would do to fix it. My most common response to that is, what do you think?
Right, absolutely right. What have you tried? What could happen if this, then what? And let them walk through the scenarios. Because sometimes I do think people get, especially some of the up and coming with less experience, get a little bit analysis paralysis, where they just are afraid to make a decision because they don't want to let us down. They don't want to make a big mistake. And we are firm believers that through mistakes, as long as you truly understand what that definition is, through mistakes, your education, you grow your education, you grow your learning. And sometimes they're painful, but it's also accountability that helps you walk through that.
I think you said something there about stress. I think having a clear understanding of what your culture is, a clear understanding and document kind of showing here's how to operate within this culture to create this culture kind of takes away that stress. Stress comes from not knowing. Stress comes from, am I doing the right thing? What's most common is actually what you said, Jennifer, is stress that induces paralysis, which means people don't make a change or do anything, and that usually is the cause, in my experience, of the biggest issues, right? When no one does anything about a problem that's happening because they're so stressed about how to do it. Another reason why having 27-page or not 27-page, a 27-point document
26 points.
It's a book. It probably is a book, which is good, and it should be done. So, but it shouldn't be. I think you also said, don't just put it on a wall and forget about it. Actually live it, right? Use it as a living document that you go to. So to go through the end of the 10 dynamics part of this. So, when things get really tough, like staffing shortages, as we spoke about, I guess like with COVID, it was almost a reset, which I don't think as managers and business owners we ever experience. I mean, in our lifetimes, we're never going to go through a period where we feel like we're restarting from scratch. So it was quite an experience. But like staffing shortages, turnover, even conflict, how do you keep morale high? Like, how do you keep that morale as high as you do? And can you share a challenge where you faced, trying to keep that morale high, and what did you do to keep that morale?
Well, there was no greater challenge than COVID itself. And Casey did mention that we had a major layoff, but we kept all of our leadership team on staff. And quite frankly, between COVID and today, we have replaced over half of our leadership team, in part because of that restart. So for me, in my seat, hiring individuals to take on leadership roles and then getting them, not only teaching them about their role specifically, but for us, it's about a year's worth of time in your role before you are really clear on what our culture really is, because the words can say our culture, but teaching them how to live our culture is always a constant struggle if they're coming from the outside in. But then teaching them about their enrollment cycles and their staffing cycles, and then how their department operates. Those things, I don't have a specific, like we have this internal problem. We don't have a lot of those because of the culture that we have in place, because of the hiring mantras that we live and have in place. But I think for me specifically, it's just been a little bit of that turnover of leadership from long-term, decade-old leaders to new. We currently have 3 24-year-old department leaders on staff. That's young, so that's a constant challenge. That is probably our greatest challenge, helping them to understand how we function, that when we say you learn by making mistakes, that we really honor that and believe that and will support you through it, but we're not going to give you the answers. The only answers we'll give is, what is our culture, and what happens when you get a little misaligned? How do we bring you back, or how do you bring your staff members back?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I answered your question at all.
No, I think that was a good statement, regardless of whether or not you answered the question.
With morale, you kind of asked about morale, and one of the things that I thought about was that we have changed leadership. I can think of some, one in particular, a leader that we put into a role who was not thriving, to kind of go back to that same idea. And so having that conversation, like, I'm not sure this is the best fit, and that person still working here.
Oh, sure.
Right.
After saying, yeah, I don't think that this is the right spot for me. And so being okay with, hey, maybe we need to shift some seats on the bus, but we still all believe in each other and believe in what we're doing. Let's just, maybe we need to shuffle around a little bit. So I think to me that speaks about our culture and our company as a whole. If someone says, yeah, it's okay for that I'm not in that seat that I was in before.
And I think you and Jeff talk, but we do quarterly meetings, and in those quarterly meetings, we invite not just our leadership team, but any key people who are very involved in a department. They're invited, as well as part-time people. But in an effort to increase morale, now I'm thinking a little bit more clearly, we've instituted quarterly play dates, and those have usually some kind of a message regarding our culture, always have some kind of team bonding or group bonding, which could be games and relays, or we brought puppies in, and always food. We feed everybody because we all...
Food's always good. Food's always good. So, yeah, I kind of feel that going back to your original, when we're talking about staffing, when you're hiring character and personality, and that is the basis of your hiring mantra, then it's really about finding people's area of genius. What is it that they love? Because if they're of good character, they're hard worker, all of those traits that you can't train, or it's about finding their right spot. And if you find them the right spot, that personality will blossom. And obviously sometimes you got a square peg and you're trying to get them in that round hole, but then as soon as you get them in that square hole, they take off because of that you hired a good person, a great person, and all you need to do is find the right spot for them. And we call that finding somebody's genius, because everybody has a little bit of genius, something that they just excites them and gets them up in the morning. And if you can actually find a job and a role that fills that, then that's kind of, morale kind of takes care of itself in a lot of ways, right? So kids first's future and the future of kids activity centers, off air, the first time we spoke, Jennifer, we got into AI and it got kind of dark and
did
scary.
we go down a rabbit hole?
But, technology is rapidly changing and it's changing everything. How do you see tools like automation and AI impacting kids activity centers? I feel like it's going to impact my business greatly, just from a technical standpoint of how it's operated. I do see kids activity centers as somewhat immune to it in a very specific way of children. If there's parents that are bringing children to be taught, they probably want to be taught by humans and not AIs. However, I think we both spoke about the fact that, jobs might change, all sorts of things might be different out there. What's a challenge in adapting to all of this change and stuff that's going on? Is it something that you even think about, or is it something that you're kind of like just letting work through?
We think about it all the time. It's actually been a hot topic at a lot of the conferences that we've attended over the course of the summer. We feel the same way. We feel like most parents will want their children taught by humans and want that personal touch. But I think it's twofold for us. I think the rapid change of technology and the use of AI with an organization our size will help lead to greater efficiencies. You look at how it does design work and edits videos and helps with staff training and your curriculum development. That takes man hours out of the mix. To an extent, not all of them, but those resources can then be put back into the organization in terms of offering that experience differently or more modern experience that may or may not include AI for us. I think you look at things like gamification and augmented reality and virtual reality. I don't know how quickly we will adapt to that, but we're already using AI to help us with our staff development, training development, updating our curriculum and design work. And we use it for data analysis on the back end of our company. We are starting to use it with some of our marketing content. So I think, I don't know, will kids wear wearables and we'll track their individual progress, where then we'll relay that to the families? I do think our consumers are looking for more personalization when it comes to experiences like we offer. And I don't know how we are going to navigate that, but we are constantly collaborating on that.
And I would like to think about it in these terms, that if the world is moving to such a digital way, and if the outside world and children's experiences become screens and digital and all of that kind of thing, that we get to be this unique experience for them that is the complete opposite, where we are humans and we are eye to eye with them and we are able to impact them on an emotional level. I think that's what we're good at already. That's why we're successful and why we're so impactful in our community already. I think that isn't going to change. I think it might even become much more valuable to families.
I agree. And I think if we were to have the same conversation, who knows, a year, 5 years, how rapidly are we moving? I don't know. I think taking exactly what Casey is saying and then be able to track that into tangible terms for a parent more quickly than just a skill tracking. But how do you individualize this class for each student in the class? And we do that on the floor, but I think today and tomorrow's consumer wants to see a little bit more of how that impacts them personally.
I can see how there's certain products that haven't been invented yet that will be invented, possibly even inside a year, based on services and products that I see that just need a little bit of an augmentation, a little bit of a change. I know that there's products where it's a coaching assisting tool where a camera is facing apparatus and a student is going through their routine and it replays it like 15 seconds later and so forth. I could see that being augmented to the point where it's personally taking data from that person, being able to figure out, oh, that's Casey doing that, or that's Jennifer doing that, and here's what they did, and then bringing that data and putting it into a thing that parents could be able to take. I could see that happening inside a couple of years. That's just kind of like data recording and showing progression and being able to share that data, that one-on-one interaction between humans. I do believe, and I like to think that will be something that people will be crying out for. I know for us right now, we're very anti-screen for our son. We've committed to this, and I think it's going to be very hard in a couple of years, but committed to never getting him a smartphone. If he wants a smartphone, he's going to have to buy it himself. He's not putting it on a plan he's going to have to pay $1,200 for a smartphone, and he's not going to be allowed to do that until he's a senior in high school. So I don't know if I'm getting myself ready for a massive battle that I don't want, but we see that as so critical because we see the difference between the kids that are engaged in reality and the kids that engage with their phones. And there's a real sadness to me in the kids that are very phone orientated. I like to think that kids that are going into kids activity centers are maybe a little bit more interactive with the world, and kids that unfortunately don't come into kids activity centers, they're going to be a lot more on the screens. But I think you're right, Casey. I think what we do in this industry is going to be really critical, I think, for the well-being of our kids. Sports, soccer, our son has to play a sport. There is no choice. He has to do at least one sport all the time. There's got to be something that he does to get him out of the house and run around and challenge him, right? And interact with other people. Otherwise, he'll be bugging me all the time. Can I watch TV? Can I do this? Can I play the computer game? I think it's important for parents, and I think it's really important for kids' activity centers to get that word out there. And one of the big things that I think, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it, is I know you guys are quite connected to your community. I think there's probably not a lot of people in Cincinnati that aren't that have kids or had kids that have some kind of knowledge of your business. But how important is it in your mind that kids activity centers, especially with where technology is going, are connected with their community, are communicating with their community in a way that parents understand what you do and how important it is for their kids?
We've made a real effort just exactly to that point over the last 4 or 5 years. Specifically, it was something that I felt really strongly about when I was in the Tumblebee department, is how to express with parents about all the benefits that their children were getting and why it was so important for them to be moving their bodies and what that was going to do for them in the long term. I've really felt that it was important for parents to feel like they had a resource in us. I think parents want the best for their children. Of course, we all want to set them up for success. It sounds like you're better than us because you're at the right time where you know that the screen is not the right thing. Our kids are like lost causes. They're too big. And then as a whole with our messaging, it's been really important for us, and really something that's, of course, I think is important for Jen to make sure that she's the leader of what our message is, and it's to make sure that we hold it, telling parents what it is that we're here for them and how can we help them to help their children be the best selves that they could be.
I think too that the old adage, it takes a village. We want to be part of the development of the children, but we also want to be, exactly what Casey said, a resource to the families. And my generation, our generation, has developed today's child, and that includes screens, and that we gave them this device without knowing what that long-term effect of those devices could be. And we recognize, I don't know if you're familiar with the book Anxious Generation, but we recognize the value of a play-based childhood. And while our instructional programming might not be in the strictest form of what a play-based childhood is, we are closing the gap between a screen-based and a play-based, and giving those kids a mental break away from a device, not looking for likes, not looking for shares, no algorithms. It's just come in, learn how to use your body, get that benefit that we know is there, the brain body benefit of moving your body. Try something hard and be terrible at it and get back up and try it again. Those are the benefits that our service industry provide for our children, and if given the chance, can help develop them into strong humans that go far beyond our walls.
And I would like to think too, we're also giving them these tools to be able to want to, if they start to feel this joy and excitement by moving and being a part of an activity like this, that they're going to be more likely to want to seek that outside too, whether that's going to ride, they're confident to go ride their bike in their neighborhood, go to the park and feel, and what I'd like parents to feel is safe, that their children are going to be able to play at the park without falling and hurting themselves.
Or get back up
and get it right, and being able to navigate the interactions with each other. I'd like to think that we're helping those kids and parents just feel like that they're prepared.
What excites you most about the future of kids' activities programs? I know we've spoken about it, but what do you think is the one potential challenge that really, really keeps you up at night?
I always say, are there going to be less children? How are people going to have less children?
I think that's a fair concern. That does not keep me up at night. But what keeps me up at night is the whole big picture. The whole big picture. Parenting styles, the change in parenting styles, which creates a change in children. I'm facing with our full-time employees in a service industry that requires evenings and weekends. That 40-hour work week is a long week for a lot of young people. And then you add in there, it's 6 days a week that sometimes turns into 7, mostly with, I mentioned we have 3 department leaders that are 24. We've got to be mindful of what their needs are socially. They can't go out and do things with friends if they're here every night. So I think our industry may have a pivot at some point. And I don't know that it will ever be, those elite level athletes, they're training during the daytime, they have some balance. How do we create that balance for our everyday full-time employee who's here? How do we just balance their life for them so that they want to be here and contribute? So
Right.
again,
I think those are two, like the population bomb is a concern. I think it's real. It's part of AI. I think AI is going to help us be more productive and maybe fill in some of that population bomb, which is undoubtedly there. I hate to say it. If societies aren't having 2.3 or 2.2 kids per family, we're going to have a shrinking population. The United States, I think, is possibly a little bit insulated to that because it's still a really attractive country to come, and immigration is, everyone hears about immigration. There's way more people trying to come into the United States than are leaving, which that is kind of propping things up. But there are definitely other countries, you look at Korea and Japan and so forth, that their populations are steadily declining. Those are going to be issues. But let's end with this final question. So fast forward to 10 years from now, which is scary to me because I have no clue what's going to be going on in 10 years. But let's fast forward to 10 years from now. What do you think a thriving kids activity center will look like? And what are the major challenges that will separate the ones that succeed to the ones that don't? Are they going to be different than what it has been, or is it going to be the same stuff?
I think it has to be activity centers with lots of different activities, I think, is really the key, because kids aren't all looking to do the same thing. Parents aren't all looking to do the same thing with each one of their children, and being able to offer them the thing that might drive their passion and their excitement. That's what we want to be able to offer. And maybe that looks, that's something we're always like, okay, what's the next thing? What do we want to offer our families next? What are they looking for? What is something that no one else is doing yet that could be something that our families are really excited about? So I feel like that is going to continue. I think it isn't just going to be, this is the one thing that you do here, and that's it. And you go across the street and you have to go do one thing over there. I think having a place that has multiple offerings, we're kids activities only, but I think a thriving activity center might consider finding ways to involve their families, whether there's workspaces, whether there's some way for them to get together as a community as parents. I think that could be something that people might be seeking in 10 years, especially when they are the adults who are also not getting socialization, perhaps, in their work lives and in their regular lives.
I also think if you're poised well, meaning you have a good solid reputation for educating children in whatever programming you offer, regardless of how strong your school systems are, I think that the public will be looking for alternative education opportunities for their kids. Yeah. I think especially in those programs that have high level training intensity, they want a little bit more balance. I think tomorrow's family is not going to dedicate 20, 25 hours a week of primetime training for their student athlete. They want to be able to be a family. To Casey's point, they may be looking for family group activities, but I even think that gymnast or that soccer player that's training 16, 20, 25 hours a week, they may want a little bit more balance. And are you a kids activity center that can offer a non-traditional education opportunity within your organization to offer those kids balance?
I think parents really are looking for that. If you think about schools, I don't know, Arizona's not a good example because it's pretty lowly rated. I'm in Arizona when it comes to education, but all the things that seem to be taken away are the activities, the physical activity stuff. It seems to be when a school's trying to save some money, let's just cut the PE program, let's just cut sports, let's just cut this, let's get rid of the sports field, let's, blah, blah, blah. Which when I was a kid, I grew up in New Zealand, so it's a little bit different. I don't know how you guys went, but when I was a kid, I had 2 hours of playtime at school. Right, I had half an hour recess in the morning, I had an hour of lunch, and I had a half an hour of recess in the afternoon, and there was about 5 hours of schooling in between. And I think as much as it was good for us to run out the wiggles, right, which I had all through my schooling life, probably still have to this day, I think I learned as much in that playtime as I did at the schools that I went to. Being part of a sport was critical, right? That everybody played in the sport. In New Zealand, we had rugby and cricket with the main sports, and there'd be 8 teams of rugby. There would be 12 teams of cricket because everybody was playing, right? You wouldn't just have a junior and varsity or maybe a club team. There was depth, and you had to wiggle your way all the way up to get to the top team. And I worry that kids don't have that. That's where teams are now. It's human interaction. One of the things I do love about what you guys do and your commitment to it is that commitment to that human interaction, that part of us that is truly human, which is active and social. A happy human typically is an active one with a community and friends, right? An unhappy human might be in a basement playing Xbox all day. And I think what you guys do, and I think any parent that's listening to this and they live in the Cincinnati area needs to understand this. Kids First for years has been a bastion of making sure that that's happening. I think that's going to be more important as technology and things move forward. But with that, I've stolen a lot of your time. I'm worried about both of you because you're the top dogs of Kids First Sports, and I've stolen an hour and 15 minutes of your time. So thank you very much for coming in, sharing your wisdom. I'd love to chat with you at a later date. You guys are awesome. I think we got a lot of good stuff out of it, from team culture to staffing to the future. I think there's some really good stuff there. So thanks for joining us on A Family Business.
For having us and for spreading this kind of message. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.